All right, hello, this is Steelfur Speaks on the road. I am, of course, Steelfur, as always, filming with my beloved and trusty iPhone. Since I have no cameras or anything computer-wise, I've got a terrible laptop and we're kind of just on the road. This is West Island. It's looking very foggy and it could rain any minute, but we're going down this road here, if we can dodge this water, to a little bit of a beach. Now, we're going to talk today, I think, about Living Legend. I think that's probably the good topic, but also they've made some changes to the format of how they're doing suspensions and bans and those kind of things, which I think is quite interesting. So, in general, the Living Legend changes, I think no bans really required for CC at this point. Kind of makes sense. We've got a new set coming out in January, so it really does make sense they're going to rely on that to shake up the meta rather than do anything else. And of course we have this whole concept of, just let the set do what it will instead of trying to balance it. And even if there wasn't a new set coming, I mean, the meta feels kind of fun at the moment in CC. There was a little tournament in the UK yesterday, and I think Dorinthia won, or Dorinthia versus Kano in the finals. And Kano's having a bit of fun, which seems to be good enough for him. Oh, my shoelace is undone. Sorry, chaps. Okay, so chaps and ladies and gentlemen and anyone in between, all that kind of stuff. We're a bit rough and ready today, as you can tell, with all this kind of recording, but at least you get these fantastic views, which you don't normally get. You just get to see my room. So yeah, so no changes in CC kind of makes sense. The Blitz changes were just basically unbanning some wizard cards where there are no wizards to play them, which is a bit sad. But give everyone a bit of a break from instant speed arcane damage seems to be okay. And then there was this change just to let people know that Sabres are coming back with new Kasai, which I think kind of had to happen. I mean, Sabres are Kasai's kind of like signature weapon, so it doesn't really make sense for them to be gone from the game, especially when we know, based on the spoilers from Heavy Hitters, that she is intended to use those weapons unless she was going to get another one. So really, I mean, that kind of just makes sense, and also, at least in the meantime, it makes it legal for Bolton to use them as well. So I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think the interesting crux of today's banned and restricted list announcement was the Living Legend changes. And I think there was a lot of debate about whether they would make any changes to Living Legend, and people were in different camps on the matter. Let's just stop on this rock, I think is the good plan. So people were kind of in different camps on the matter. With some people saying, hey, actually, I don't think they should make any changes to Living Legend, because if they don't, then that's how we get that power level, So it's much more exciting if we find the hero that beats Stavro rather than just depowering Stavro and then seeing what happens. I have no idea if this is pointing in the right direction. Okay. We're just going to have to roll with it. We'll assume I'm talking to the camera. And, and other people saying, well, actually, it's just not a fun format as long as Stavro is in there the way he is. So he really needs to be powered down and to change before we kind of keep going and before any of that kind of happens. So I didn't really know what camp I fell into until I saw the changes that they made. And then I realized, actually, I am kind of in the depower Stavro camp, right? Because, I mean, for a simple reason, it's very unlikely at this point, based on the trajectory of the design of the game, that we're going to see any hero on that power level again, right? We've kind of reached a point where that was the peak of design of the game, when they were learning the design for the first time, and they were kind of trying to figure out the best way to get in there with the power level. And also they didn't really, power it down properly during COVID and all these other things happened. So there wasn't really an opportunity to balance it properly and to power it properly. And they've told us that multiple settings and multiple interviews. They've said, look, we didn't really test Tales of Aria properly because COVID was going on and we weren't really sure where the power level was. So, we've had that. And I guess following on from that, there was this idea that due to that power level mishap that Stavro is probably the most powerful the game is ever going to be, in terms of his, interaction with the powerful Guardian control effects, and in terms of, kind of his free action point gain, damage gain, free go again gain. When Stavro works, he's the strongest hero in the game, and when he doesn't work, he's still pretty strong. And I think the main issue as well, which becomes more and more apparent with Living Legend, especially with heavy hitters featuring a Guardian hero, is that every time they print any card for Guardian that's good, like Starstruck, even if they print it as a Bravo specialization, it still powers up. Stavro. So you're kind of in a really tricky situation where you've printed the most powerful hero in the game, and then you've also, created a problem where any future cards you print for Living Legend also increases power, which I think really just highlights what needs to happen with the Living Legend format in terms of these bans and restricted lists. So that kind of swayed me over to the side of actually, do I want a Living Legend format where we're constantly looking for something that can beat Stavro, or do I think that's never going to happen? So actually what we're looking for is a powering down of Stavro so that other heroes that are printed later on can exist in the meta. I think that's what's happened here, but they're not saying, hey, these cards are banned, they're not taking them away. They're just saying we're going to give a bit of breathing room on these control effects like Starstruck, Crippling Crush, just to make room for other heroes to be able to play the game. And I think that's kind of a good point to aim for on the on that metric. I think that's kind of a good point to aim for in terms of health of the Living Legend format going forwards. The other thing, of course, to note is that they did ban a lot of ice cards, and it feels like Icelander is the hero that's waiting in the wings for Stavro to be slightly less good. So the second that you nerf Stavro and Icelander is sitting there just being like, well, I've got lots of control effects as well. So I feel like it kind of has to be that way. There has to be this kind of sense of, actually, we're going to control Stavro and then we're going to do something about Icelander too. So then the format theoretically becomes one where the older heroes are slightly constrained, not in a way that makes them unplayable or not fun, but constrained enough and balanced enough that actually it is viable to take newer heroes that are your favorites into a Living Legend format, and not just to feel that actually, because I wasn't playing the game 4 or 5 years ago and I don't have all these, older cards, I can't play. I think really that's the thing, is that if you want Living Legend, Living Legend can go one of two ways, right? It can go we play this once a year at Worlds, and it's the most busted shit anyone's ever seen, and it's just Stavro everywhere until something gets printed that's better than Stavro, right? Not really ideal. Or it can go to we balance it a little bit, and we play it a bit more often. And people with newer heroes feel like they can bring those heroes and compete. Probably not win, because the older heroes are still better, but at least have fun rather than just being blown out of the water, which, based on what I've spoken to people about at Worlds, was the experience if you weren't playing one of a set sort of very short hero list with Stavro at the top in the Living Legend format. If you brought a Riptide or any of those new heroes, you just got blown out of the water. It just didn't work. So, I think there is that is an important consideration. And I think I know which is more fun. I think a balanced Living Legend format where all the heroes are slightly constrained enough so that they're not just instant power wins, and creating a little bit of breathing room for new heroes is the most fun. So I think I kind of agree with that. Also, just to call out, I'm a big proponent of Commoner, and it does seem that Commoner is getting some much needed changes. Specifically Stubby Hammer's and Amulet of Ice being banned. Both Icelander and sort of Phi and those really aggressive decks were the most popular decks in Commoner. So, I think that change needed to happen. It's important that Commoner exists as a fun, reasonably high-powered format within with a very, very, very low cost to entry. But there does have to be a cap on how powerful it is. Because you don't have a lot of the defensive tools that exist in rare cards or in equipment to deal with these really powerful attacks that come in. So, if we have a point where, Stubby Hammers is going off and just dealing tons and tons of damage and there's nothing you can do about it, it's not really a good point, is it? So I think something to just be cautious of and aware of there, I think, is the real thing. So all in all, I like those changes. The other thing that was in the announcement worth just talking about is that they've just decided to get rid of the suspended language. I think that's all right. I think it's okay to just ban stuff and unban stuff. I think saying suspended creates sort of like this expectation which you potentially can't deliver on, just because of how the game changes from when you make an announcement to when it doesn't. Like, you might suspend a card and then realize actually we don't want it coming back, but you've created this player expectation that it will come back, which I don't think is necessarily the healthiest thing for the game. So I think that's just probably a good decision. It just clarifies the language. Something is either banned or not banned. It's not suspended. And if they want to bring it back or reprint it, they can. Like, there's nothing stopping them. It just changes the language and clarifies it a bit. So those are my thoughts. I mean, as I say, this is Steelfur Speaks on the road. I have a lot of free time over the next sort of week or two, and then I'm going skiing for the first time ever, which will be kind of hilarious. So I'll record some videos of that and share them with people for a bit of fun. But otherwise, yeah, I'm doing a bit of FAbtcg analysis live from the road. I will be back in the land of the living. Not that this is the Deadlands, it's just really, really foggy. But I will be back sort of in the country in time for the Heavy Hitters pre-release. But then, of course, next year in February, I'm going to Japan, kind of like for a 3-week holiday. So I may in fact be missing... I may in fact be missing the RTN season again. So I may in fact not be able to qualify for Nationals again. But that's a problem that's coming up. Anyway, this is Slapdash. This is recorded on a phone camera, but I think it worked reasonably well. Hopefully the audio's been fine. Other than that, I'll be doing a 2023 wrap-up soon. But if you're not going to have time to watch that video, you just have time for this one. Have a happy Christmas, season's greetings, happy holidays, whatever you call it in your part of the world. Maybe you don't even celebrate it, but that's all right. We're enjoying it here back home in a tiny house surrounded by all my family. Try not to break my neck on a beach. So have a good time, everyone, and I will speak to you all soon.